He's now in Canada's Prime Minister has pushed back against Donald Trump's 51st state claims in a face-to-face meeting at the Oval Office. The meeting overshadowed by the impact of US tariffs imposed on Canada. Carney's Liberal Party won the Canadian election on promises to build a new economic relationship with the United States.
My government is committed for a step change in our investment in Canadian security and our partnership, and I'll say this as well, that the President has revitalized international security, revitalized NATO, and us playing our full weight in NATO.
In the meeting, the President refused to rule out turning Canada into the 51st state. Carney, though, adamant that's not going to happen.
It would really be a wonderful marriage because it's two places that get along very well. They like each other a lot.
As you know from real estate, there are some places that are never for sale. Having met with the owners of Canada over the course of the campaign last several months, it's not for sale, won't be for sale.
Speaking post the meeting, Prime Minister Carney says the pair had a very constructive conversation, including on tariffs.
Is willing to have that negotiation. I think that's the main thing. That doesn't presuppose the outcome of the negotiation. As I've emphasized, it's a complex negotiation. There'll be zigs and zags, difficult aspects to it, but the prospect is there. We discussed it in more detail.
Let's go live to Dr Larry Leduc. He's Professor of Political Science at the University of Toronto. Larry, thanks for your time. What's been the reaction to the way Prime Minister Carney handled that awkward encounter, but he seemed to handle it quite well?
Yeah, hi, Karen. Canadians have been on edge all day wondering how this was going to play itself out. Many of us thought it was a rather bad idea for Carney to be going down to Washington just a week after the election, because it seemed to present a very high-risk kind of situation where he's on Trump's turf with no assurance of any gains to be made, and probably very little that could actually be gained. But we've been hearing now, since the visit is over, we've been hearing the word constructive a lot, and constructive is one of those words that can be taken either positively or negatively, but basically it means not much. So not much has really come of the visit, except that nothing bad happened. And I think the fact that nothing bad happened, there was no Zelensky moment, has reassured Canadians that things are more or less under control for the time being.
Yes, it's interesting, isn't it? So nothing came of it, but nothing bad happened. So is this the first step in trying to restore the equilibrium between the neighbours?
Yeah, I think one thing has been restored and one has been put off. The thing that's been restored is the tone. The tone of the discussion today in Washington was pretty much positive all the way around. And although Trump threw the 51st state thing in now and then, it didn't seem to matter all that much. And it was just pretty much brushed off by Carney. Carney didn't react to it very much. He just tried to change the subject whenever he heard lines like that. So the positive tone has, I think, created a lot of positive vibes for the visit more generally. But just, saying that there'll be future meetings isn't much. Everybody knows that eventually there'll be negotiations over trade. And those negotiations are probably going to take a long time. And there's no particular timetable for them to start. So the idea that now the negotiations are in progress, I think, is a bit of a stretch coming out of this meeting.
There was one very good line there, though, from Prime Minister Carney, where he said, well, Mr. President, in property, some properties are just not for sale and never for sale, and sort of transferring that to the argument about why Canada should not be the 51st state, Larry.
Yeah, and Carney very cleverly worked on a couple of examples. He said, like the White House that we're sitting in here and Buckingham Palace, he said those are properties that are never for sale. And Trump, of course, coming from a real estate background, laughed at that and picked right up on the theme. And I'm sure Carney practiced that line before he went down there.
We've just had an election here at the weekend, and the centre-left government of the Albanese Labor government has won. Similar, probably a bigger margin, I think, a lot bigger margin. It was an outright majority and a thumping win for them. Part of the mix... Yeah, part of the mix here has been the backdrop of uncertainty created by President Trump and the stock market and tariffs and flow on to people's superannuation and so on. As you've reflected on the outcome for the Carney victory, how much did President Trump decide that result?
Oh, I think Trump was the central factor in our election right from the very beginning. And Carney sold himself as the man who could stand up to Trump, given his international experience and his time as governor of the Bank of Canada. And then coming after Trudeau's resignation, of course, it meant that a new prime minister like Carney might be able to change the subject and present a new image in Washington. And I think that's what's happened. But right from the beginning to the end of our campaign, Trump was right at the center of it. And all the parties, that was all they could talk about, is which one was the better one to stand up to Trump.
Yeah, you can see why, given, as we know, next door neighbours. Dr Larry Leduc, Professor of Political Science at the University of Toronto. Great to chat. Thanks for your time and your insights.